So welcome back to Bitesize Theory. Again, just to go through how this is going to work, the idea being is I'm picking out questions that learners tend to struggle with on their theory test, maybe because they don't come across it very often in real life, and we're just going to try and add in a little bit of extra information for you so that when you come across those questions, you've got that backing knowledge that you can get the answer right and you're not guessing. Today we're going to talk about turning right on a dual carriageway. So this is something that doesn't come up very often. The majority of the times when you're coming onto a dual carriageway, you're coming on from the left-hand side, either via slip road most of the time, or sometimes via a junction. So I've got an example question here. You're turning right onto a dual carriageway. What should you do before emerging? A, stop, apply the handbrake, and then select a low gear. B, position your vehicle well to the left of the road. C, check if your vehicle will fit in the central reservation gap. D, make sure you leave enough room for the following vehicle. So let's go through those options. So A, stop and put it in a lower gear. Yes, that might potentially end up happening, but it's not something you're aiming to do. You should never be aiming to stop, put the handbrake on and put it into a gear unless you're at a stop junction, and even then you don't necessarily need the handbrake on. You should always be aiming to roll into junctions, whether it's onto a dual carriageway or onto a smaller road, with the potential of being able to go. So you're already in that lower gear, you're already ready to go, your feet are ready, and you're looking for that opportunity to go. Yes, there may be, if you're sat there waiting for a while, you may put the handbrake on and you'll already be in that lower gear, but that's not the goal on the approach. So the second one, position your vehicle well to the left of the road. That just makes no sense if we're turning right, because you're going to get vehicles come up along the inside of you who are also waiting to turn right, and we're just causing confusion here. We're both going the same way and we're now sat next to each other. That's not going to work. C, check if your vehicle will fit into the central reservation. Now this is the correct answer. So I think the reason a lot of people struggle with this is they maybe haven't seen one of these in wherever they live. So it's basically you've got the dual traffic coming from the right, and then you've got a central bit that potentially will fit a vehicle, and then the traffic coming from the left. Now if this central bit can fit your vehicle, you can take it in two sections, so you can get across the traffic coming from the right, stop in that central bit or roll slowly in that central bit, as long as your back end is out of the way and your front end isn't overhanging, and wait for the traffic coming from the left. If your vehicle can't fit into that central bit, you need to make sure it's clear in both directions like you would do on a normal road before you enter into the dual carriageway, making sure that you're not going to cause anyone to slow down or change direction when you do so. So D, make sure you leave enough room for a following vehicle. Again, not really your problem. Even if you're driving in tandem, you shouldn't necessarily be waiting for gaps that are big enough for both of you. You can always catch each other later on in the journey, or pull over in a safe space to catch each other up. But sitting there waiting for a double sort of kind of gap will potentially cause traffic jams and hesitation and frustrate drivers behind you. So it's not a good idea, that. So coming along with this, you've also got the potential for turning right off the dual carriageway in these sort of scenarios. In these scenarios, you want to be that extra little bit cautious because you're now exiting the dual carriageway from an overtaking lane, potentially with some faster moving vehicles who maybe aren't expecting it. So if they haven't been looking at the signpost themselves, maybe because they're not going that way, and suddenly there's a car in that lane that they're expecting to do some overtaking, is now starting to slow down. So what I'd be looking to do is obviously check my mirrors first, see what that situation is, and then maybe give them a little bit more warning than I would do for a normal left exit, to make it clear that I'm going to be coming off the dual carriageway and therefore potentially slowing down. I'd want to do as much as the slowing down as possible on the slip road provided, but that all depends on how big the slip road is. So if it's a long slip road, yes, I'm going to use that to slow down. If it's a shorter slip road, then you will have to slow down on the dual carriageway. Therefore, you want to warn that car behind you that you're going to be doing that. So when making decisions to either emerge onto a dual carriageway or turn right off a dual carriageway, you are now judging the traffic. So you're now cutting across traffic that is traveling at high speeds normally. This can be much more difficult to judge, so do take a second to make sure you've assessed the speed, not just the distance of the vehicles. Make sure there's no motorbikes blocked in any blind spots. So if you've got a lorry approaching that you think maybe I can get in front of that lorry, but actually is there a cyclist or even a car in a blind spot that you can't see created by the lorry there, who may be traveling a lot faster. So we're going to need a few checks there to let the situation develop, which would then allow that bite come out of the blind spot so you can see it on one of your second or third checks before entering the dual carriageway. So again, I hope this has helped. We're going to carry on these small bite-sized chunks of theory. The idea being is we're going to build up a nice selection of videos so that you can browse through and you can learn the theory rather than just practice the theory. Thanks very much. See you next Thursday.